The scent reached Mara before the plate touched the king's table. Bitter metal, faint enough to vanish beneath honey, cinnamon, and the dark spice glaze brushed across the ceremonial cake. She stopped with both hands beneath the silver tray. Around her, the great hall remained alive with music and conversation. No one else seemed to notice. Mara lowered her eyes as if adjusting her grip and breathed in again. She knew kitchens. Years spent sorting herbs, checking preserved fruit, and throwing out spoiled stores had taught her that every ingredient carried its own trace. Honey could turn sharp. Nuts could sour. Iron pans left a recognizable edge. This was none of those things. The strange scent clung to the glaze alone. "Bring it forward," the steward whispered. Mara obeyed. At the high table, Alpha King Ronan Vale finished speaking with one of his counselors and turned toward the cake. Lady Celine Arwick stood nearby, elegant and composed, accepting congratulations for overseeing the evening's presentation. Mara's pulse climbed. Celine had supervised the ceremonial arrangements. Mara had seen her near the serving table earlier. That did not prove anything. The thought should have kept Mara silent. Instead, Ronan reached for the knife. The first slice came away cleanly. A servant placed it before him. Mara caught the scent again, stronger where the glaze had been cut. "Wrong." Ronan lifted his fork. "Your Majesty." Mara's voice barely carried over the music. He paused. The steward stared at her in horror. "Step back." Ronan's gaze settled on Mara instead. "What is it?" She could still retreat. Apologize. Claim she had dropped something. Keep the palace position that gave an omega like her food, wages, and sanctuary. Then the fork moved toward his plate again. Mara stepped between the table and the serving tray. "Don't eat it." The nearest guards moved instantly. One caught her arm, while another reached for the cake. Conversation died across the hall. Ronan did not raise the fork. Why? Mara forced herself to look at the glaze. That metallic bitterness was still there, buried carefully beneath the spices. Her eyes moved toward Celine before she could stop them. Celine's expression hardened. "What are you implying?" Mara knew she could not name the substance. She had no proof of who had touched it. But Ronan was waiting, and silence now would be another kind of choice. "She put something in your cake." A shocked murmur swept through the hall. Celine went white with fury. "I did no such thing." The guard tightened his grip on Mara. Ronan set his fork down. "Secure the cake," he ordered. Then his eyes returned to Mara. "And nobody leaves." The order broke the silence. Guards moved to every door while the steward lifted the king's untouched plate and the remaining cake onto a side table. Mara's arm was released, but two guards stayed beside her. Celine remained standing near the high table, fury replacing the shock on her face. "I supervised the presentation," she said. "I did not bake that cake, glaze it, or touch his portion. If a waitress intends to accuse me before the entire court, she should have more than a frightened expression." Mara swallowed. "I smelled something." "What?" Ronan asked. "I don't know." The admission sent another murmur through the hall. Ronan silenced it with a glance. Palace specialists were summoned from the adjoining service rooms. They examined the glaze, crumb, fruit, and cream separately, using the same tests Mara had watched kitchen staff use whenever contamination was suspected. Nothing changed color. Nothing reacted. No known lethal poison revealed itself. The senior examiner finally straightened. "Your Majesty, I find no evidence of poison." Celine looked directly at Mara. "Then arrest her." "Not yet," Ronan said. His attention returned to Mara. "You stopped my table, accused a noblewoman, and gave me no name for the substance. Tell me exactly what you know." "Nothing more." Mara appreciated the last instruction more than she expected. "The smell is bitter and metallic. Very faint. It's underneath the spices. You can identify poisons by scent." "No," she shook her head. "I can identify when food smells different from what it should." One examiner gave a dismissive breath. Mara ignored him. "I worked around herbs and preserved stores before I served here. Spoiled oils, mold, bitter. Roots, bad nuts, metal contamination. You learn what belongs together." Ronan gestured toward the secured cake. "And this does not." No, Mara approached only when he permitted it. She leaned near the cut surface without touching anything. The baked interior smelled of butter, spice, and fruit. Then she moved toward the glossy outer layer. There it was. "The glaze," she said. "It's stronger there." The examiner checked again, this time comparing the crumb with a scraping from the surface. His expression changed slightly, though his tests still showed nothing lethal. There is an unfamiliar trace in the glaze, he conceded. That does not make it poison. I never said I knew it was poison, Mara replied. Celine seized on the distinction. Yet you said I put something in his cake. Mara looked at her. I saw you overseeing the presentation. I spoke before I knew more than that. An accusation that could destroy my name. Yes. Mara did not hide from it. Ronan studied her for several seconds. The cake stays secured. No portion is destroyed. No sample leaves without being recorded. Then he addressed Mara. You have until the palace examination is concluded to show me why that trace matters. Approximately 2 hours. If you accuse anyone else, you will bring evidence with the accusation. Understood. The security captain stepped forward. Your Majesty, she carried the tray. By her own reasoning, she had access. Mara felt every face in the hall turn toward her. Ronan's expression did not soften. Then investigate her access too. He looked back at Mara. You wanted this examined. Now it will be. The security captain's suspicion followed Mara out of the hall. 2 guards escorted her through the service corridor toward the ceremonial kitchen, with Ronan and the captain several steps behind. No one spoke until the kitchen doors opened. Inside, abandoned bowls, cooling pans, and stacked trays showed how abruptly the celebration had stopped. Start where the cake started, Ronan said. Mara looked over the work tables. Not the cake. The glaze. She asked the kitchen staff to leave every container exactly where it had been. Then she retraced the ingredients by scent, honey, ground spice, preserved berries, citrus peel, and the syrup used to thin the final glaze. One by one, they smelled ordinary. The captain watched her with open skepticism. She could point to anything and call it wrong. Then let her be wrong where we can see it, Ronan said. Mara continued. Near the rear storage shelves, she found a covered ceramic jar marked for the ceremonial glaze. The moment its lid lifted, the bitter metallic trace returned. Fainter than on the cake, but unmistakable. This. The senior examiner leaned over it, then compared it with the scraping already taken from the cake. His expression tightened. Same unfamiliar trace. Mara's breath left slowly. She had not imagined it. Ronan looked from the jar to her. Can you prove it came from here? Not yet. Only that the same scent is in both. Good, he said. Keep saying only what you know. The words steadied her more than praise would have. The captain called for the kitchen intake records. According to the entries, the jar had been brought into ceremonial storage with supplies prepared for the evening's presentation. Beside the entry was the authorization attached to Celine's household arrangements. Mara stared at it. Celine had supervised the presentation. Her authorization followed the contaminated ingredient. The pattern seemed suddenly simple. She had access to this too, Mara said. Her household did. The captain corrected. That is not the same thing. Mara knew that. Still, Celine's furious denial echoed in her memory. It fits. Ronan's gaze sharpened. Does it prove she contaminated it? Mara hesitated. No, then we are not there yet. The examiner began gathering the jar. Mara stopped him. Separate it. He frowned. Why? If this is our only matching sample, don't keep all of it in one place. The captain almost objected, but Ronan nodded. A small portion was transferred into a clean-sealed vessel and recorded separately before the original jar was secured. Mara watched both containers leave under different guards. Only then did she notice Ronan watching her. You expected someone to interfere with it? He asked. I don't know what to expect. That answer is becoming reassuring. For the first time that night, something almost like warmth touched his voice. Mara looked away before she could mistake it for more than it was. She had produced evidence, nothing else. Yet when the captain suggested she be confined while Celine was questioned, Ronan refused. She stays with the investigation. The captain's jaw tightened. She remains a possible suspect. Then keep watching her. Ronan turned toward Mara. And you keep following the evidence. Mara glanced once more at Celine's authorization in the ledger. She told herself she was doing exactly that. But as they left the kitchen, she had already begun to believe she knew where it led. Celine was waiting in the adjoining investigation chamber when they returned. She had recovered her composure, but the ledger on the table drew her attention immediately. So you found my authorization, she said. Mara stopped across from her. The contaminated glaze stock entered under your household arrangements. And that is not the same as saying I contaminated it. Celine placed a second record beside the first. My steward transferred the supplies before the jar was opened. After that, ceremonial storage was controlled by palace staff. The security captain inspected the times and seals. His expression hardened. The record agrees. Mara felt the certainty she had carried from the kitchen begin to loosen. Celine looked at her. You smelled something real. That does not make your first guess true. Ronan said nothing. He was watching Mara instead. She returned to the secured scraping from the cake and the separated sample from the glazed stock. Same trace. Same strange bitterness. But if Celine had not controlled the jar when it was opened, then the authorization proved less than Mara had wanted it to. The senior examiner repeated his conventional tests. Again, nothing registered as lethal. Perhaps it is simply contamination, the captain said. Then why hide it under spice? Mara asked. You still assume it was hidden. Because it is strongest where the glaze was added, not through the cake. She leaned closer to the samples, thinking through every scent she knew. A killing poison. Should have been measurable by something besides her nose. And this trace was too restrained, almost deliberately faint. I need one comparison. The examiner frowned. With what? Mara looked toward Ronan. His scent. The room went still. She did not ask him to touch or consume anything. Instead, under the examiner's supervision, the preserved residue was exposed near a cloth Ronan had just handled, while an identical clean control remained separate. At first, Mara thought nothing had happened. Then the metallic edge in the contaminated residue sharpened against the alpha scent, subtle but distinct. The clean control did not change. The examiner bent closer. That reaction wasn't present before. No, Mara whispered. Her earlier assumption collapsed completely. She turned toward Celine. I was too quick. Celine's eyes narrowed. Mara forced herself to continue. Your authorization made me think you had done it. It doesn't prove that. I accused you before I had enough evidence. The admission tasted worse than fear. If Mara was wrong about Celine, the court could decide she had been reckless about everything else too. Celine gave no forgiveness. At least we agree on that. Ronan stepped beside the table. But not on the contamination. No, Mara said. That part is real. He studied the two samples. And now? Mara looked at the altered residue again. Now I think we've been asking the wrong question. The captain folded his arms. Which question would you prefer? Mara met Ronan's eyes. Not what could kill you. She pointed toward the sample that had reacted to his scent. What was this supposed to do to an alpha? The question changed the room. Ronan looked toward the senior examiner. Can you answer it? The man hesitated. Not from our poison tests. Mara kept her attention on the contaminated residue. The reaction against Ronan's scent had stirred an old memory, not of poison, but of warnings repeated in the herb house whenever certain bitter compounds were stored near concentrated wolf scent preparations. There were roots we weren't allowed to mix with scent-binding oils, she said slowly. They weren't deadly. The danger was confusion. The examiner leaned closer. What kind? Recognition. Mara searched the memory carefully, refusing to claim more than she knew. In small amounts, the effect wasn't immediate. Heat and digestion changed the compound first. After that, an alpha could smell familiar scents incorrectly, or fail to separate them from unfamiliar ones. The security captain's skepticism disappeared. For how long? I don't know. How long before it begins? Ronan asked. That answer Mara remembered. About 2 hours after it swallowed. Silence settled over the chamber. Ronan's untouched slice of cake suddenly seemed more dangerous than when everyone had believed it contained poison. He turned to the captain. What happens in this palace 2 hours after the cake service? The captain did not answer immediately. Then his face tightened. The security transition. Mara looked between them. What transition? Celebration posts returned to standard rotation, Ronan said. Outer guards change stations. Service access is reopened as guests begin leaving. The captain added. For several minutes, men entering one section may be unfamiliar to the guards leaving it. Mara felt cold spread through her. If Ronan had eaten the cake, the compound would have begun affecting him near that exact window. His greatest advantage as an alpha, recognizing his own pack even amid confusion, would become unreliable. Someone didn't need you dead, she said. They needed you unable to trust what you smelled. Ronan's gaze moved to Celine's authorization record. And while we spent those 2 hours investigating Lady Celine, Celine's expression sharpened. You were supposed to find me guilty before anyone asked what happened afterward. Mara looked at the evidence again. The visible trail toward Celine had been almost too convenient, because convenience itself had been part of the design. Her accusation had helped it. I gave them exactly what they wanted, she said quietly. Ronan answered without softening it. For a while. Then he turned to the captain. Expand the investigation. Every person with access to ceremonial storage and every security route connected to the transition. Quietly, Your Majesty, changing the rotation now could expose that we know. Then don't change it yet. Verify it. The captain left to issue the orders. Mara glanced toward the wall clock. More than an hour had already passed since she had stopped the fork. The original plan had failed because Ronan had never swallowed the cake. But whoever had arranged it might not know how much they had discovered, or might know enough to act anyway. Ronan followed her gaze. How long? Mara calculated from the moment the cake had been served. Less than an hour until they expected the effect. A guard appeared at the chamber door, breathing hard from his run. He looked directly at Ronan. Your Majesty, there's a problem with the kitchen records. Mara felt Ronan's attention sharpen. What problem? The guard swallowed. Someone got to them first. The kitchen records had not vanished completely. That would have been too obvious. Someone had soaked the final pages until ink bled across the entries, leaving names, times, and signatures smeared into useless gray streaks. Mara stood over them without touching anything. Only the pages from tonight? Ronan asked. The guard nodded. The earlier entries are intact. The security captain arrived moments later carrying worse news. The original glaze jar was disturbed in storage. Its seal was broken. Mara's stomach tightened. The separated sample? Untouched. Ronan looked at her. She remembered insisting that the evidence be divided before anyone knew it would matter. Bring it here, he ordered. The captain did not move. There is something else. He placed a written access report on the table. Mara recognized her own name immediately. It showed that she had entered the ceremonial storage corridor after raising the alarm, during the period when the contaminated stock was being examined. I was escorted, she said, and I never entered storage alone. The report records your authorization under investigative access, the captain replied. You found the contaminated jar after accusing Lady Celine. Then the records supporting its route were damaged. His meaning was clear. Mara could have planted the second trace to rescue a failing accusation. Ronan, read the report once. Who authorized this entry? My office. The captain's answer came too quickly. Mara looked again at the damaged pages, then at the access report. The explanation being built around her was neat. Cleaner than the truth had ever been. The jar was inside controlled storage before I entered the kitchen, she said. Who could open that area without appearing as an ordinary kitchen worker? The captain stiffened. Palace security controls service access. Mara's attention moved to the seal notation beside the surviving portion of the ledger. She had seen hundreds of storage marks stamped onto jars and supply crates. This one looked correct until she noticed the lower edge. The impression had been pressed twice, slightly offset. That seal was altered. Ronan came beside her. How can you tell? The border doubles here. She pointed without touching it. Someone resealed the route after the original mark was made. The captain examined it. That proves tampering, not who did it. I know. Mara looked at him. But a waitress cannot issue or replace a controlled transfer seal. The room fell quiet. The evidence against her had not disappeared, but it had developed a problem. Whoever had manipulated the supply route possessed access she did not. Ronan folded the report and set it down. Preserve that seal notation with the separated sample. The captain's jaw tightened. Your Majesty, procedure requires that Mara be detained while her access is investigated. Ronan looked from the damaged records to the intact sample, then to Mara. Procedure has already produced a contaminated store, destroyed records, and a report that ignores the guards beside her. His voice remained calm. She stays. That puts the investigation at risk. So does pretending the simplest answer is automatically the correct one. Mara glanced toward the clock. The remaining minutes were disappearing. Somewhere inside the palace, someone with access to security logistics had realized the cake had failed, and now they were erasing the path behind it. Ronan followed her gaze. Can the altered seal tell us where that path went? Mara thought of the controlled service routes, feeding into the ceremonial hall. Not from here. She looked toward the corridor. But if the same trace passed through whatever was resealed, I may be able to find where it was transferred. Mara looked toward the service corridor. I need to check the transfer route myself. Ronan's expression closed immediately. No, if the same substance touched whatever carried that jar, I may recognize it. Then tell the guards what to find. They couldn't smell it in the cake. She held his gaze. Neither could your examiners until I showed them where to compare. The security captain stepped forward. The transition begins soon. That corridor will be under active rotation. Which is exactly why whoever did this used it, Mara said. Ronan's jaw tightened. And exactly why I won't send you into it. Mara felt the old instinct to lower her eyes, accept the order, and be grateful that someone powerful considered her worth protecting. She refused it. You're not sending me. The words made the captain stare. I'm choosing to go. Ronan stepped closer, but he did not touch her. You are already being accused of contaminating evidence. If something happens there, I may not be able to protect you from what follows. Then don't protect me from my decision. Mara pointed toward the preserved sample and altered seal record. I started this because I knew what I smelled. If the trail ends somewhere only I can recognize it, keeping me here protects the person who made it. For several seconds Ronan said nothing. Your terms? He asked finally. Mara had not expected the question. She answered anyway. I go as part of the investigation, not as bait. And if I tell you the scent leads somewhere your people think is impossible, you let me finish checking before you overrule me. Ronan nodded once. Agreed. The controlled service transfer area lay beyond 2 guarded passages. As they approached, Mara could hear boots changing position ahead. The rotation had begun. Containers waited along the wall for movement between storage and the outer service stations. She worked slowly despite the clock, testing the air around handles, lids, and stamped transfer tags. Nothing. Then she reached a narrow supply container near the final checkpoint. Bitter metal touched the back of her throat. Here. Ronan stopped beside her. Mara bent closer. The container itself was clean. The scent clung to the wax around its transfer seal. She compared the impression with the altered notation they had preserved. The same doubled lower edge marked both. This passed through the same resealed route. The captain stared at it. That still doesn't name anyone. No, Mara said. But it connects the contamination to this transfer point. A shout cut through the corridor. Then another. Boots struck stone from beyond the checkpoint. Too many, moving against the expected flow of the rotation. One guard reached for the gate lever. Another voice from farther down the passage ordered him to open it. The captain turned sharply toward the sound. That command came early. Mara looked at Ronan. The less than an hour window had just disappeared. Whoever planned the breach was no longer waiting for the cake's 2-hour effect. Ronan moved between Mara and the checkpoint. She caught his sleeve. You agreed. His eyes met hers. Then, instead of ordering her back, he shifted enough to leave her sight line clear. Stay with the evidence. The gate mechanism began to move. Mara looked from the contaminated seal to the men approaching beyond it and understood that the proof she had followed into this corridor was about to collide with the attack it had been built to hide. The gate opened halfway before Ronan raised one hand. Hold it. The guard at the lever froze. Beyond the bars, men in palace uniforms were already moving toward the checkpoint, but the rhythm was wrong. Some belonged to the incoming rotation. Others were using that movement to disappear among them. Mara could smell leather, steel, sweat, familiar wolves, and beneath it, on the wax seal beside her, the same bitter metallic trace that had started everything. The security captain stepped toward Ronan. Your Majesty, the threat is at the outer passage. We need to move you through the west corridor now. Mara looked at the captain, then at the transfer seal. Something tightened in her chest. The altered access report. Bearing her name had come from his office. Palace security controlled the service routes. The damaged records had appeared while his people controlled the evidence. None of those facts alone had been enough. Together, they finally formed a chain. No, Mara said. The captain turned. This is not the time. It's exactly the time. She lifted the sealed transfer tag without breaking its wax. The cake glaze carried the first trace. The storage stock carried the second. This seal carries the same trace along the route someone altered. We already know the route was compromised by someone who could change security access. The captain's face went still. Careful. He turned to Ronan. Detain her. Now. We can settle accusations after you're secure. 2 guards hesitated. Ronan did not. Stand down. The captain stared at him. Your Majesty? You heard me. You are trusting a waitress over the officer responsible for your safety. Ronan's gaze remained fixed on him. I am trusting evidence over your rank. The words carried through the checkpoint. Every nearby guard heard them. The captain's hand moved toward his weapon. That was enough. Ronan seized his wrist before the blade cleared its sheath, and loyal guards closed around him. Beyond the gate, several uniformed men broke formation and rushed forward. Close it, Ronan ordered. The gate slammed down between the groups. Fighting erupted on the far side as loyal guards turned on the infiltrators now trapped inside the outer passage. Mara forced herself to stay with the evidence instead of the noise. The supply containers, she said. Check every sealed one before anything leaves this route. Ronan relayed the order immediately. 2 containers bearing the same doubled seal were isolated. Their contents had not yet reached the celebration stores. The planned contamination would go no farther. The captain struggled against the guards holding him. You have nothing that proves I touched the cake. Mara faced him. You didn't need to. She pointed from the preserved transfer seal to the access report still carried by one of Ronan's investigators. You controlled the route that moved the contaminated stock. Your office created the record meant to place me inside that route. The kitchen records were damaged after we found the matching sample. And when the 2-hour plan failed, you ordered the breach early through the same checkpoint. Celine's authorization had been camouflage, visible enough to consume the investigation while the real access remained inside palace security. Ronan ordered the surviving records, seals, samples, and access reports seized together. The captain was stripped of command and taken into custody as the infiltrators beyond the gate were contained. Only then did Mara realize how hard she was breathing. Ronan turned toward her. He had never eaten the cake. His senses were clear. When one disguised attacker tried to retreat among loyal guards, Ronan identified the unfamiliar scent immediately and ordered the correct man detained. The trap had depended on taking that certainty from him. It had failed because Mara had stopped one fork 2 hours earlier, and because, when the evidence became inconvenient, he had chosen to believe what it proved. By the time the last infiltrator was secured, the celebration had become an investigation scene. The damaged kitchen records, Mara's separated sample, the contaminated glaze, the altered transfer seals, and the false access report were placed under independent guard. Together they preserved what the security captain had tried to erase. He remained in custody, stripped of command, and awaiting formal pack judgment. Celine stood before the same court that had watched Mara accuse her. Ronan cleared her publicly of arranging the contamination. Celine accepted the correction without pretending the night had made them friends. When her eyes met Mara's, Mara inclined her head. She had been wrong about Celine, and admitting it had become part of proving what was true. Mara expected to be dismissed once her statement was recorded. Instead, Ronan stopped her beside the secured evidence table. The contaminated cake will remain sealed, he said. The record will show whose warning preserved it. Mara looked at the label attached to the evidence container. Her name was written there, not as a suspect, but as the person who had identified the first anomaly. I also need someone with authority to inspect ceremonial stores without waiting for a noble household or security officer to grant permission, Ronan continued. Paid authority. Direct reporting access. Yours if you want it. Mara studied him. Hours earlier, keeping her waitress position had seemed worth staying silent for. Now he was offering responsibility because of what she could do, not because she had become someone different. I want the authority to stop a service when something is wrong, she said. Even if the person being served is you. A faint smile touched his mouth. Especially then. Then I accept. Later, after statements were taken and the corridors had quieted, Mara found Ronan in a small palace dining room without guards or counselors surrounding him. A fresh cake sat between 2 plates. She stopped in the doorway. That seems unnecessarily brave. I was told the kitchen made another. He cut a small piece and placed it on a plate. Then he held it toward her. He did not eat first. He did not command her closer. He simply waited. Mara approached and bent over the slice. Honey, cinnamon, dark spice, butter beneath the glaze. Nothing bitter, nothing metallic. She looked up. Well, Ronan asked. Mara took the first bite herself. His eyebrows rose. She chewed slowly, making him wait now, then handed the plate back. Clean. Ronan accepted it from her. I believe you. You eventually learned. I had a difficult teacher. Mara almost laughed. His hand remained beneath the plate, close to hers, but not claiming it. The space between them felt different now, still uncertain, but no longer divided by rank and disbelief. Mara released the plate because she chose to. Ronan took the next bite. And this time, there was nothing in the cake that either of them needed to fear.